Go Cats. It is Wednesday. No, it is Thursday. That's usually our catchphrase. So it's Thursday, so you don't know what that means. Well, I'm here to tell you what that means. It means that D Money is out on assignment right now, somewhere in Japan, trying to find the latest 3-star, and that he can talk himself into being a savior. Peter Rees, our intrepid producer, beautiful eyes, great golden peepers. He's producing this from an airplane somewhere. So what I have scheduled here for our loyal and tremendous CanesInSight audience is something totally new. Hey, Pete, pop in, hop out. We have a happy hour for you loyal viewers out there. And we're going to get going right away with our first guest, David Lake from Inside the U. We needed somebody that was plugged in, an ear to the streets. I see the trending stories on CanesInSight. I'm sure, David, your message boards over at Inside the U are all buzzing with the same kind of news. Everybody wants to know where Halsey is going. The DB from Houston, it seems as though like a lot of big programs are circling this player. So let's begin with the pursuit, because the most exciting recruit is the next one on the docket before we dive into the recruit that committed earlier this week. Where does Miami stand right now on their pursuit in helping add a body to what is slowly becoming a crowded secondary room?
Yeah, so secondary, of course, was a position that needed to be addressed. I think after the spring evaluations were done, they felt like still needed to add more talent, particularly at safety. AJ Halsey certainly makes sense, right? He's a guy that's coming from Houston, who was coached under Zach Etheridge, who's now at Miami staff. So there's certainly connections there. He has visited Miami. Everything I've heard is that visit went great, but the SEC is also interested in a talent like AJ Halsey, and particularly LSU seems to be one of probably the top competition for Miami at this stage. And now it's just kind of I think he's going to go check things out at LSU, and it's kind of let's see how that visit goes. And then he's got a decision to make. And, look, just the way things are now too, he's got to leverage as much as he can, NIL wise out of wherever he wants to go. So, but I think fit wise, he's a great fit. My understanding is at Miami, he'd be kind of more of a big nickel than, and he's played safety. He's played safety at Houston, but I think Miami's vision is, okay, big nickel, kind of that maybe even athletic linebacker. That's what he would be at the NFL level. He's like a 6 foot, 215 type of defensive back, thicker guy that's really good tackler. So he'd be a good fit. You need those type of guys for a season opener against Notre Dame, right? So Miami's going to be in the mix. I'm sure they'd like to get an answer sooner rather than later, but for a talent like him, I think you play the long game.
How much of this is about his talent and also a window that is shrinking, a position that is highly in demand? When you're getting into an arms race against a program like LSU, I'm naturally predisposed to not like my chances, though Mario Cristobal has changed that narrative. But how much of this is about the player, and how much of this is about where we are in the calendar and desperation starting to hit, even though LSU has done very well so far in this portal?
I think it's a little bit of both. You got, at the end of the day, recruiting's just about getting the player. And so a player like Halsey, I think, you try to leverage it as much as you can in your favor. If you don't get a bite, but he's still out there, you still play the game. And really, if you think back, to last year even, these pursuits, they just take a while, take longer than you want. You think about Cam Ward, you think about even Carson Beck, or finding a quarterback this year, how long that took. Tyler Barron last year took a while. I think even like Simeon Barrow took a while. So really the only one that was kind of like done was kind of Damian Martinez, but even he took some visits just to do it. So I do think LSU is a real concern for AJ Halsey. But yeah, I mean, the talent and the window, it's all coming together in Halsey's favor in terms of a bidding war coming to life.
I'm glad you highlighted Miami's success in these kind of extended pursuits, the filetes of the world and the message board posters of the world. Their impatience is understandable,
Yeah.
But usually when these things get into the long game, Miami's pretty well positioned. Mario Cristobal, once again, has a pretty good track record to point to. That doesn't satiate the desire to answer these questions. Now, I want to ask you a little bit about that, but also you like him as a big nickel.
Yeah.
Most Miami fans would say, but there's still a glaring hole at safety. What would be the answer at safety? Do you move someone that is presently at corner to safety? Is the answer on the roster? Do you have to go shopping again? How much time do you have? Is that even an option?
I think so. Jacoby Thomas is an option. He's a transfer portal guy that from Tennessee that has visited Miami as well, and they also like him. I think he could also play in the box, but he would, in my opinion, if you can get them both, and I think you sell them both on that vision, I think you do it, and I think it's possible. It probably comes down to budget, right? So, however that plays out, but I think a Jacoby Thomas. He's a solid veteran, experienced guy, over 1,000 defensive snaps of experience. And he's a guy that you need on that back end to pair with a Zechariah Poyser, because right now you're looking at an inexperienced guy in Markeith or, down the roster a little bit. So I think he would be, honestly, there's a lot of optimism there in general. And so I wouldn't put him in with Penn, but I would pencil him in to this transfer portal class, and then let's see if you can also close on a Halsey.
All right, we'll address the jersey that you're wearing in a little bit with our next guest. But even though you're giving the Panthers love, you're giving a real rat bastard some love too that I'm not exactly happy about. Credit to 63, he had a good game and whatnot, but to go as far as to have a jersey and support this kind of nonsense, I got a bone to pick with you.
Yes, well, okay. Do they win last night without Brad Marchand?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. If Brad Marchand was he the first star of the game, or was it Bob? Like, deservedly so. Brad Marchand was probably the most impactful.
Luosterainen, also good.
Well, he tends
4
to play on
points.
that. He's playing on that line.
Yeah.
I think there's a reason why Brad Marchand. That's a perfect line for Brad Marchand. He should stay on the third line. Although I do think if you plug in a Mackey, you get similar results, if not better, certainly more consistent in terms of being on the puck. But we have a big-time guest, so we can talk some playoff hockey because it is a huge slate in the NHL, and this is more of a free-flowing happy hour vibe. Let's
do it.
So we're going to be all-encompassing there.
Let's do it.
You're trying to trigger me with the Brad Marchand jersey, and I'm not super pumped about that. So we mentioned you mentioned the possible answers at safety. I know some people may feel a little confused as to why we're prioritizing nickel, but that is such a huge position in pro football, certainly college football. It's kind of like an analytics thing. Can you explain the focus on addressing that position and why it's so important to Mario Cristobal and Coach Heatherman?
It's the versatility of it is important, and Coach Heatherman, I think he just has a different philosophy on it than Coach Guidry, and I think you could argue maybe he puts more of an emphasis on the importance of that position than Coach Guidry did. I think right now they have, so I think you need two types of nickels in general. I think you need a coverage nickel. Who would that be on the roster now? Maybe a Charles Brantley, maybe a Damari Brown could be a coverage guy that can also bring some physicality. And then against teams, again, like a Notre Dame, you're going to want to have another DB on the field that brings that physicality element. And that's where ideally an AJ Halsey would help address that need. I think, again, so my take is I think against ACC teams, you can get away with maybe playing with some lighter DBs, lighter looks in the box and whatnot. But against teams like Notre Dame, against teams like Florida, against teams like, let's say you get to the college or the ACC championship game and play Clemson, you're going to need some bigger bodies, physicality in the box, and a guy like AJ Halsey would address that for Miami.
Yeah, I'm a little worried about some of the names that you mentioned before, Damari Brantley. Like, I don't know what kind of contributions I can even count on them, not just because of health, but because of some of the things that you just outlined when it came to size. Am I wrong? Now, I have not been to spring practice at all this year. I've been too busy. Apparently I hate my family, but I just body types.
So
I'm concerned.
Damari looks the part. So you get, in my opinion, I think you got three cornerback body types that look the part in
Well,
terms of prototypical.
Well, we know that Damari looks the part, and when
Yeah.
he plays, he's effective. But my worry is his body going to break down, and how committed to this
fair
program,
concern. Yeah.
and how committed to this program is he? That's a lot of competition for a guy that, you know, there's been rumors about in the past about his level of commitment. So
Yeah.
I don't want to get my expectations to a place where I'm counting on Damari Brown, because I've kind of already been concerned about him for quite a while.
And I say, you know, he intrigues me as a nickel. I don't know if he feels the same way, right? I think he sees himself more as an outside corner. To me, he's more of a big nickel safety, but he's not playing there at this point. So I do think he's a talented player. I think he's got a chance to be a rotational player. But then you talk about Charles Brantley, and, you know, he is a guy that's slight. If you're just talking about body types, you look at him and it's impressive that he played as much as he did at Michigan State, because he is a slighter body type. So will that body type break down as a season progresses? And if it does, what do you have? That's kind of a scary thing to think about. And so, yeah, what I'm speaking to also is depth. I think, you know, Charles Brantley as a depth nickel, I like it. But as a starter, I get a little queasy thinking about, you know, going into Notre Dame with Charles Brantley playing a bunch of snaps at nickel.
All right, let's talk about the player that did recently commit to Miami. Believe it or not, even though Miami fans probably feel great about their running back room, because Fletcher provides a toughness, a short yardage, a leadership addition to that running back room. And Jordan Lyle does a lot of those similar things, but he has game-breaking ability. You needed a body in there to kind of grind out some of these blowouts, another body to help the rotation. When Miami feels good about its backs, Miami does indeed give a lot of touches to a lot of different backs. Jordan Lyle benefited from that when he was one of the hotter hands. What can you tell me about Shamar Brown, how he's going to fit in this offense? Because I'm sure they sold him on playing time, not necessarily blowout playing time either.
Yeah, I mean, look, Miami's goals are to play in the postseason this year, right? And so that's a lot of games. That's a lot of snaps. That's a lot of carries, wear and tear on, you know, the projected top two running backs. It's still the projected top two are still Mark Fletcher and Jordan Lyle. And so they had to go out and get a running back three because the drop off there was just too steep right now with where things were at with the roster. And Shamar Brown is a perfect fit for RB3. If you think about it, like, it is hard to sell, hey, come in and be our third running back. And so when that's what you're selling, I think that can somewhat shrink your market a little bit. But to me, like, if you're trying to sell RB3, you're not going to get much better than what a Shamar Brown brings in terms of his productivity, his production, what he did last year at North Dakota State. 1,000-yard running back, Jerry Rice Award winner, which is like the best freshman at the FCS level. He's definitely more of like a power back that, you know, that consistent 4 yards at a pop type of guy, good contact balance type of guy. To me, he's just a dependable all-around guy. He's really good in pass protection, which matters, of course, at the college level too. So I think he's going to be a consistent RB3. And look, that's one of the more physical positions in football. And so at some point during the year, he'll probably have to be elevated to RB2 because of the wear and tear that just happens, you know, during the course of a season. And then hopefully things get healthy there and he's back to his RB3 role. So I think they hit a home run. Again, selling RB3, I think, is a difficult sell, and they hit a home run with Shamar Brown. Now, is he a game changer? No. Will he ever be, like, down the road a starting running back for Miami? I would probably say no. But he can still play a big role, an important role, and be good in that role.
I have an interesting question, and I think this is right up your alley, David. I think that my theory is that if we revisit A.J. Allen, I understand why he left, certainly at the time that he left. But am I crazy to think that there would be more of a role for AJ had he stuck around, had he been patient, and he might have provided something like exactly what Miami would have needed, and he would have thrived in that role to the point that maybe he would have preferred that over the role that he's going to get, RB1 at FIU, not the greatest line. I think he's going to end up being the greatest running back in FIU program history, and surely that's going to entice him. But I do think that there was a role for him here. It wasn't clear, though, when he left.
Yeah, I think, sometimes guys get frustrated with their current situation and they don't see the long game. But I totally agree with your analysis there that, talent for talent, AJ Allen's probably a more talented player. Who will more effectively maybe produce in this RB3 role and be better for that running back room in general? I think you could argue Shamar Brown's going to be better in that role than maybe even AJ Allen would have been, because I think Shamar has accepted this is my role, and I think that's important in sports to have self-awareness of what you can bring to the team and to your role.
All right, the rolling carousel of guests during our Spring Stampede episode of Canes Insight continues. We welcome now a legend around these parts, someone that guested on our Hurricane special. I'm talking, of course, about Chris Fallica, the Bear. I cannot wait to talk to him about some playoff hockey. Pete, have him hop in at your kindest leisure. So, Pete, intrepid producer there. Hey, Chris Fallica, the Bear.
It feels like the chat. What's going on, man?
Yeah, pucked up chat in the house.
What a night we got tonight! I would love to see us start off the night with an Ottawa win, have everybody in Toronto sweat a little bit, and have flashbacks to all those first round exits. Yeah, great night. We're going to be up late tonight doing a lot of chatting and a lot of handicapping for the ponies this weekend.
Well, let me throw the Miami fans a bone here before we get really deep into the hockey action today, because I do want to talk to you about that. We just got in the weeds about a North Dakota State running back, so like we're taking care of the nerds. But a treetop view on Miami's offseason, and I know that this is a big if because he throws with his arm. And he's recovering from arm surgery. But if Carson Beck is merely what he was last year, which was not even really meeting expectations, probably down from expectations, but if he's merely that, what do you expect in terms of win total for Miami? How far can this team go?
I mean, I think it's ACC title game or Boston. I mean, I hate to phrase it that way, but I think a lot of people are looking at Carson Beck's 2024 stats and kind of, the interceptions and a lot of things were down. You got to look at the receiving core that he had. His best receiver entering the year was Raul Brown was kicked off the team. Jacoby George, a guy we know, was suspended for a while.
Kobe Young, yeah.
As we know, but
yeah.
He was throwing to tight ends that obviously a drop off for Brock Bowers. I mean, they were looking for pass catchers all throughout the year, and they just had guys, whether Arian Smith or 86, I forgot his name already. I know he transferred, like dropping balls.
Well, that's not good.
All
if
over
the names.
Exactly. It's like when Herb Street and I used to always talk numbers. We didn't say names. We always used to say numbers. That was our code for each other. But I think if you go back and look at 2023, and I know maybe Miami doesn't have a Brock Bowers or a Lad McConkey on their roster, but this is a guy who, you look entering last year, he was viewed as a top 5-10 draft pick in the Heisman Trophy conversation. And I see no reason why he can't bounce back and be that guy for Miami this year. Miami is upgrading their pass catching unit as well. If he's healthy, and I have no reason to believe he's not going to be healthy. I have no reason to believe the people in Miami would be putting their eggs in the Carson Beck basket if they didn't believe that. I mean, look at Brock Purdy. I mean, he basically had the same type of procedure, and he had a great year for the 49ers despite all of their injuries elsewhere. So I expect Miami to have a great year. I think 10-2 is probably a baseline. I think even the most optimistic of Miami fans will be a little hesitant and worried with that opener against a team that played for the national championship last year and one that is going to be very good defensively again. But they got a quarterback situation of their own now. I think Miami should take care of Florida in their fourth game. They should beat Florida State, and they'll just because it's college football and it happens, you look at the Virginia Tech game or the Louisville game or something like that, they'll probably drop a game along the way. But they are very, very rightly the favorite or the second choice to win the ACC.
To me, the question.
Yeah, I wanted to bring you in actually because the chief propagandist here, and I love that you just hopped in here. Inside the U, Canes Insight crossover.
Let's go.
For Inside the U. But D-Money is obviously out, and he's a chief propagandist here, and he'll hype up Lofton
Correct.
and he'll hype up JoJo Trader. I'm hoping to come to you for some more rational expertise on those players to see if, like, I'm not saying a Brock Bowers or a Lad McConkey's on this roster, but can someone be an answer for Carson Beck? But also start with what you were going to say there.
So, okay, Carson Beck. One thing that interests me about, how good can Carson Beck be at Miami, and getting into nerd talk, right? So S&P Plus is a metric that accounts for pace of play and opponent. It adjusts for both.
We
those
love
things.
Bill Connolly, SP Plus.
Right.
We're a huge fan.
So, okay, you look at the defenses that Carson Beck faced. According to S&P Plus, last year, I think he faced 8 of the top 30 defenses in the country last year. Miami, I think, faced 2, and I think they were Duke, and I think it was Florida, and they were both like 28th, 29th. And so just if we're talking about, and look, I'm not trying to hate on the ACC, but I'm just real talk, right? Like Carson Beck was going against really good defenses and really tough environments. And like Bear was alluding to, his receiving group was not very good. So I think as long as Miami gets like Georgia Carson Beck at least, and he can be better than that. But if that's what Miami gets, I think they win 9 or 10 games, and they should go. To me, the question is not 9.5 over under. To me, the question is more, can they go 7-1 in ACC play? Because that's the path to Charlotte. That's how you get into the college football playoff.
Bear, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's a great way to look at it, because I think a lot of people are looking at Beck from last year and looking at what he's faced there and what he's going to face coming this year. I think is a good way to look at it. Now, yes, they do pick up a more difficult defense in the non-conference in Florida or in Notre Dame, and they will play Florida again. But I think we saw last year with the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, they are not afraid to put the loser of the ACC championship game in the college football playoff, as they did with SMU. And I think they are going to be hesitant to kind of minimize getting to the ACC or conference championship game, simply because, I mean, there are a lot of coaches and administrators on that selection committee that winning still matters, and they played for a conference championship, and that matters. And if Miami gets to the college football, the ACC championship game, and they're 10-2 and they lose that game, they're going to be in, just like last year. They would have been in. So, I agree that just getting to the ACC, one loss in the ACC is really what we're looking at here. Split Florida, Notre Dame, lose one game in the ACC, and they'll be playing college football playoff.
I know we've had some time away from it, and SMU ended up laying an egg at Penn State, and their quarterback just kind of his bones jumped out of his skin in front of that crowd. But it felt like the narrative around that ACC championship game until SMU got hot at the end and made it close with SMU was going to be out, and it felt like everyone was looking for every excuse to push them out. So I'm always going to be scared of that. David, I kind of agree with you that the Georgia wide receivers last year, the metrics bear it out, the draft process bears it out. They didn't have a good receiving core, but I'm curious what the national perspective is of our receiving core.
Yeah.
Because I imagine UGA fans are saying like he left for a worse receiving core here. We're counting on guys that are not necessarily proven. I understand CJ Daniels had a great season over at Liberty, had the injury. You can explain that. If we got him in the portal last year, we might be talking about this guy as wide receiver 1, but he's not that anymore. He's a bit of a project, a reclamation project.
Yeah.
This is all about development. So what makes us feel so good about our wide receiver situation over here?
That's fair. That's a fair criticism. I do like what they've done in the portal in terms of raising the floor with guys that have produced somewhat at the Power 4 level. So, Keelan Marion, BYU guy, only 350 receiving yards of production, but he is a talented guy with speed, and he was an All-American kick returner. Is there more meat on the bone there for him as a receiver in an air raid type of offense with Carson Beck throwing the ball? We'll see. The slot receiver they got, Tony Johnson, 400 to 500 yards of production at Cincinnati. You know what you got there, right? I liked that move from the standpoint of, in general, I like the philosophy of high school recruiting. Let's get high ceiling players and then we'll give those players time to reach that ceiling, and we'll filter it in with portal players that we know what they are, proven production wise. And if those high school guys jump those portal players, that's a good thing, right? So I think Malachi Toney could potentially be a good freshman in the second.
That's what I was going to ask you. Like the recruiting, the guys that we brought in to be those high level guys. Do we think a couple of those guys can reach that level this year?
So I think you make that. I think like in this particular situation, right? Tony Johnson, you want him against Notre Dame. Game 1, Malachi Toney's a good player. He's going to be a good player. He is a reclassified true freshman this year, so he should be a senior in high school. Do you want to count on that against Notre Dame in game 1? Personally, that makes me queasy. So you're going and getting a Cincinnati guy. Let's see how he does the first. You look at how front-loaded Miami's schedule is in general this year. In the first 6 games, it's Notre Dame's in there, Florida's in there, Florida State, who I know, they're not good, but they're still Florida State, and then Louisville is in your first 6 games. So I like the idea of having veteran guys. And then, if these talented high school guys, whether it's this year or last year, are ready, go get it, right? Like a JoJo Trader, I think this receiving core can be really good. If JoJo Trader is who I think he is, I think he's a good player. I think he can be, frankly, wide receiver 1. He's got to go do it. But if he is wide receiver 1, you're feeling good about how the rest of that receiver group kind of falls in. And Elijah Lofton, he is an interesting player. He's one of the most interesting players I've ever watched because it doesn't make much sense from a body type perspective, but he does make plays. He is athletic, and they're going to carve out a role for him to make the most of whatever he is. So I think the 2 biggest things that Miami has on offense, an offensive line that's good. We'll see if they're elite. That's to be determined, but they're going to be good. And then you have a good quarterback as long as he makes that full recovery from the elbow. So those are the 2 most important things on an offense. They'll lean on the run game. I think they have good enough receivers. It's still a position that needs to improve over time, I think. But I think the offense is good enough to get to the ACC championship game.
And I'm glad sorry, Mike, I cut you off, but I think you're right. I think that's the one thing that gets overlooked a lot in college football. So there's so much focus about who's a returning quarterback, elite departure. The fact that you've got a legit offensive line that could be one of the best in the country. Look at Notre Dame last year. They did not have Riley Leather, he was a nice quarterback. He was fine. They didn't have anyone that really scared you at wide receiver. They had a great back in Jeremiah Love. But if Miami can kind of replicate that model right there, we got 5 great offensive linemen. We really don't care who our receivers are. Sure, you'd like to have a couple pan out, and we got a couple of really good backs. That's a hell of a good way to go into a season.
Absolutely. Bear, before we get into some hockey real quick, Lee Corso, it's announced he's leaving college game day. Week 1 will be his final performance. They haven't formally announced it, but it seems like Brutus Buckeye had closed the loop there. I know you and everybody else who's ever worked with Lee Corso has had tremendous things to say about the man and the character of the man. I'll give you one quick opportunity here to talk about Alapata's finest.
Yeah, no, he Lee is someone who has had a massive impact on my life and my career. And it's funny. I remember when I started out on the show in 1996, and before I really got to know Lee and figure it all out, you'd get a phone call every Monday morning at the same time. Chris Fallica, this is Lee Corso. If you could please call me back at 407-829, I need the following information. And then he every week it would be the same thing. Name, phone number, here's what I need. So he was an absolute creature of habit, but he's someone who, everyone always asks for the best moment, my favorite moment, and clearly dropping the F-bomb at Houston is something that everybody loves to talk about. And what's funny about that is we were ahead. Kirk, I always used to go to the ABC primetime game with Kirk and Chris Fowler later that night from the site of game day. And so I'm getting ready. I'm packing up my bag because we had to go from Houston all the way up to Eugene, Oregon that day. And we got word from the pilot that the wind, it was going to be a a strong headwind, and we were going to have to land somewhere to fill up on fuel. So it was going to be touch or go whether we were going to like get close to the game, be in time and plenty time for the game. So I'm packing up, and like you see Kirk in the video, like give that like nod. I'm packing up. All of a sudden I hear it off. So I look up at Kirk and make eye contact. I'm like, did he just? And that's when like Kirk is giving like the big eye and the nod. And then so we get on the plane and we're laughing about it, and we get to Eugene, and I'm getting ready in the truck, and Kirk is on the field doing his pregame stuff, and Kirk sees Chip Kelly on the other end of the field at the goal line, waves Chip on a beeline, dashes to Kirk in midfield. Did you see Corso? Holy! That was hysterical. That was so awesome. And then Lane comes over afterward. Kiffin is like, that was hysterical. That was great. So it's like, it just goes to show like everyone's watching this. No one was like offended that he in a spontaneous moment had a little slip of a lip. Everybody kind of got a kick at it, but no harm, no foul. But no, Lee's someone that gave me the nickname, and I'm honored to wear it and bear it per se. But yeah, like you said, Mike, I'd be shocked if Leo always makes the joke when he puts on Brutus the Buckeye that never forget your first love, and I think that's probably what you're going to see. Never forget your first love. First headgear was Ohio State, Penn State. Final headgear, I'm sure, will be Ohio State, Texas there for that big rematch of that great semifinal game.
We will momentarily be joined by another happy hour guest, but Bear, 4 elimination games in the NHL. It's not often that this happens where you get a 4-game slate, all elimination games. Minnesota has been very feisty. That's a game that I'm most excited. Out of these 4 games tonight, I know what we're all hoping goes 7. We're all hoping for a nice long series we just want to see Toronto in that pressure cooker. And David, you and I as Panther guys, like we're just eating all of this up. And quite frankly, I think Ottawa versus Florida is the more entertaining series, even with all the Toronto narratives. Whenever Ottawa and Florida get together, those games are really physical. They seem to hate each other. You have Nick Cousins, you have Brady Tkachuk, crazy storylines there. But out of all these games, you want to rank these 4 in terms of most likely to get pushed to 7?
I would be surprised if Colorado lost at home. I know I'm falling into that mindset, and I was high. I thought before the playoffs that Colorado Dallas series would be probably resulting in the Western Conference representative in the Stanley Cup Finals. I did not think that Dallas without Robertson and without Heiskanen would be able to do what they have done, but they have played fantastic. But I think home ice tonight, I think for Colorado will matter. I think they will get that to a 7th game. I think the next most likely would probably be Minnesota at home, getting Gustafsson back in goal. They have been great in net as well. I mean, push comes to shove. I mean, we all would love to see Ottawa win, and they might. I think it's a good shot. I do think Edmonton finishes it out tonight. I think that is the least likely to get to 7. Anytime, and again, I have no numbers behind this to prove it, but the Kings could have wrapped this series up by now very, very easily. And you've had your opportunities. They've let them get away. A terrible challenge really kind of swung that series around. I would be surprised if the Kings went into Edmonton tonight and won.
Well, it's a natural vine for our next guest. I'm sure George Sedano is expecting me to ask him about LeBron, and trust me, that question is coming. But
what about the JJ Redick quote about we need to have a team that's in championship shape? They'll tee you up right off the bat there.
Fair.
I know you're running the show.
What's going on here? Everybody, like this happy hour, the drinks are flowing, I guess. Everyone feels like they're the traffic director. We have the natural integration of asking him what the LA audience is thinking about that LA King series that we all feel turned on that terrible challenge.
Let me tell you something. People are having PTSD right now because it's the Oilers again. Okay, that's what they're having. I mean, they've had so many leads in this series that people are going bonkers. It feels like every time Draisaitl and McDavid are on the ice, like I just think they don't even want to look. They're like watching the game like this.
Yeah, might feel that way for Tampa Bay Lightning fans too. Whenever they see Gustav Forsling pushing Kucherov to board, then no one cares about Brad Marchand. Like, it's a nice, that was a blind squirrel game, blind squirrel first star. Yeah, so we're really excited for elimination games. It feels like the Kings have no shot because you could pinpoint an exact moment where not just a game was lost, but a series was lost on that dumbass challenge. What do you make of Bear's question about that JJ Redick quote? Because I was not aware that's something that JJ Redick said.
Yeah, he said it today at their facility. And look, you know, it's fairly obvious, I think, who he's talking about, right? Like, I would say that, you know, it's not been a big secret for the last couple of years. That's something that has stuck to Luka. And I think that, you know, we all know how Nico Harrison felt about it, at least in the aftermath. So, yeah, like, I think he's clearly calling Luka out a little bit. And it's why it makes sense now when Luka said last night that playing for JJ reminds him of his time being in Europe, because the history of a lot of those European coaches is they're a bunch of hard asses. So I think that all kind of vibes now.
Do you think Luka actually can get in shape? I don't know. Look, if this were a different organization that was famous for their wind sprints, people would say that that culture will actually get to him. But he does love the beer. This was, I guess, a really difficult year for him. It's kind of hard to whip yourself into shape during the season. But the way that his body is moving, I don't really see this being. I have always theorized that this is the Luka that you get. I just don't envision a scenario in which Luka is going to be all about the conditioning and all of a sudden have this crazy body transformation.
I will say this. He has had like stretches in his career where I feel like he's been in better shape. I think ideally he's in that like 235, 240 range. And, you know, according to our guy, Tim McMahon, there's been times he's been well over 260. So, like, you can't do that. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's kind of part of it. Look, I think he's going to take some of that stuff to heart because it's been discussed so many times that you would think if he's not going to get shamed into it in this scenario, then it really will never happen. Now, let's take that at face value. Let's say this is the Luka you're going to get. I mean, the guy still gives you 38, 8, and 8 pretty much on a regular basis come the playoffs. And then what you have to do is just make sure you build the right team around him. Dallas had the right idea. I think they lacked last year some shooting. I was there at that finals. And it's funny because had they had Klay Thompson, even now, Klay Thompson at this stage of his career, last year, that might have been a more competitive series, in my opinion, because they just had so many open looks and couldn't knock them down. All those guys who were not necessarily dead-eye three-point shooters who hit all those shots leading up to that all kind of regressed to the mean in that situation. So I just think that you need perimeter guys who can defend and shoot, and you need those lob threats. And if you've got that around Luka, I mean, you're good to go, I think. I think you're certainly going to be in the mix in the West every year. And now you're adding LeBron into that mix. You know, I guess just going to say that he's coming back next year because I would be stunned if he didn't. I know that Shams reported that he expects him to be back too. So let's just take that at face value, the Shams report. Then you're right there. Like, but again, who are those guys? How do they get them, Mike? I think that to me is the big question. They only have one first-round pick to give up. And you know what? They almost gave it up for a guy who was taking shots at them yesterday on social media, both on Instagram and Twitter, and probably every other social media platform available in Mark Williams. So they don't have a lot to give up unless they're going to be willing to part with Austin Reeves. And Dave McMenamin said, at least today on SportsCenter and NBA Today, that that's not likely. So we'll see how they plan on augmenting this roster.
Fellas, I can't thank you enough for being so gracious with your time. George, I know that you have to go in like 10 minutes, and Bear, by all means, stick around as long as you want to. I know David is, but this is meant to be kind of informal. So if you have to go, we totally understand. I do have one more LeBron question before we bring it back to Canes, though. The expectation is that he comes back. We've never seen a player that old that is that counted on excel in an NBA that is this athletic. Tom Brady did a thing where he just made everybody assume that guys like Drew Brees and Aaron Rodgers can play well into their 40s, when really he's the only guy to ever do that. And he's not like this athletic specimen. He just so happens to be the greatest quarterback of all time. Arguably, LeBron James, greatest basketball player of all time. But in that sport, they rely so much more on their athleticism. What is fair to expect of LeBron next year? Because do you envision LeBron kind of handing over the reins formally to Luka next year?
Yeah, look, I think he's tried to do that with Anthony Davis a couple of times. It just didn't work itself out. And we saw from the get-go, I was at that, we were chasing Luka on ESPN for a little while and that first game, but I was there when he played in that first game against the Pacers. No, actually it was Utah. The Pacers was the one he didn't play. And you heard LeBron. I mean, he was mic'd up. Don't fit in. Fit out, do you, we'll play around you. I know that in other years that might have been a pejorative, towards Kevin Love, but nonetheless, that's not the way it was meant in this particular case. It was meant as a way to encourage Luka. So I do think that this roster needs to be built around Luka's strength. And if anything, LeBron plays the more supporting role, like the 1B or whatever you want to call it, kind of like Kyrie did to Luka. Kind of like what Dwayne Wade did for LeBron early in his career. So I think that's the way this marriage works best. And then you build around that, because again, they have some, redundant skill sets. What LeBron still has over him, even at this stage of his career, at 40 and will be 41 next year, is he's vastly more athletic, obviously, than him. But in regards to thinking the game and being prodigies of the sport and playing chess while everyone's playing checkers. I mean, they have that ability to kind of see the game differently, but they need the tools to work with. So, again, to me, with LeBron, the expectation is probably still around 24, 25 points a game, probably 6, 7, 8 assists, and 6, 7, 8 rebounds. Like, I think that you can just kind of pencil him in for that kind of stuff as long as he's on the floor. He's basically said, Mike, if I can't be me, I'm probably not going to do this much longer beyond that. So for me, that's kind of the standard for him in that 25, 6, 7, 8 range for assists and rebounds.
Bear, we know
can
you have
I
to
ask
go.
one question before, and then Bolt?
Go for it. Yeah, go for it.
No, it's a regards the team that actually just beat the Lakers, the Timberwolves. Did we kind of sleep on them a little bit? I mean, they were in the Western Conference Final last year and very easily could have been in the NBA Finals. I know everyone thinks it's the Thunder and everyone else, but I would think that Minnesota, the way they play defense, could give the Thunder probably the most difficulty out of any team left.
Bear, I would agree with you on that. And if you go back to even their regular season matchups, not that you can deduce a ton from those regular season matchups normally, they were incredibly close, particularly in Oklahoma City most recently. But here's what I would say. This is the miscalculation I made when I was looking at the series and I thought the Lakers would win, was I just thought the Lakers' perimeter play would be able to push Rudy Gobert off the floor, and that he wouldn't be able to play in this series. Like, I knew Jackson Hayes was going to be unplayable in this series. I wasn't expecting that, but I was expecting that laser lineup, as JJ likes to call it, with the 5 guys out, Hachimura and LeBron basically interchanging at center and playing the bulk of the minutes. Mike, you can relate to this specifically, very similar to what LeBron did when he was with the Heat, right? Chris Bosh, kind of an undersized center, particularly for that stage of the NBA and kind of the way that particular era. So I always kind of wondered, could they last 4 rounds? That was my biggest question, playing that way, because they didn't have a lot of guys that they can trust. I thought they could get by the first round because I just thought Gobert would be a hindrance as opposed to someone who would close them out.
Bear, one last question before we let you go, and you can answer this quickly. What's the move tonight? We stack money line with the Avalanche. What player props do we take? McCarr, McKinnon, and maybe Natchez?
I like Natchez. I think Natchez is a little under the radar tonight. I think maybe a little Avs Sens money line. How about that? We'll go with the upset. We're going to bet with the heart right off the bat.
Yeah, we like some plus juice. Chris Fallica, thank you so much. We know you
absolutely. Everybody out there, make sure you support CanesInSight, support Canes Connection. You can go a long way in helping our boys get back to the national title race there.
Bear, good to see you. I owe you one still, so let's
you
out.
do. I know that was I felt so bad. I'm like, of course, I asked you to come on.
It was just happened the day I was flying. So whenever you want, let me know.
Maybe before the next round, we'll see what happens, my man. Be good.
George, before we get into Canes with David Lake, you find any good croquetas out in Los Angeles?
Tropicana Bakery out in Downey. It's about like 30 minutes outside east of downtown. East side of town is the authentic side of town, is what I like to call it here in LA. The west side, it's beautiful. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, a lot of affluent neighborhoods and restaurants. But you want real LA, it's the east side of town. Whatever you want to dine, whether it's Mexican, whether it's Cuban, whether it's Guatemalan, Honduran, Nicaraguan, whatever, even some other delicacies from all over the world. The east side of town, first of all, it's way cheaper to get a spot there if you want to have a restaurant. But B, I just think that also it's kind of what I like to call the real LA.
Okay, well, I'm sure you love the LA food scene and you have a good Cuban spot, but I also guarantee you miss living in Croqueta County. And we want to shout out our sponsors, Islas Canarias. Make sure to check them out.
Those are the best ones.
Yeah. Dude, I learned from the best in Team Money. Make sure to check them out at the Dayland Dining Pavilion. You got all sorts of croquetas. Jorge, have you ever wanted to have a kimchi croqueta?
I have not, but it would totally be up my wife's alley. Like, that's kind of her thing. By the way, the last time we were in Miami, we did go to Islas Canarias, and my wife bought one of those Croqueta County shirts.
I'm still digesting a bisame panisado that I had from there like 2 months ago. I'm going to regurgitate it like John Voight in Anaconda. Just going to come out my bisame panisado that's going to wink at J-Lo. It's going to be great. We're going to bring in our next guest in the happy hour. Kevin Clark is in our waiting room. We're going to ask him something real quick. But before, I know you have to run. I know you're out there on the West Coast. You're on the NBA beat. I don't know if you're living and dying with every pursuit in the transfer portal Miami is having. So give me a treetop view, Jorge Sedano. What are you most concerned about entering next season for the Miami Hurricanes? And what are you really optimistic about that you like that they've done so far in this offseason?
Well, look, I think the biggest concern everyone's had is just defensively, right? And particularly the secondary. Now, maybe they can remedy that. I know that they've taken steps, at least reportedly, to do that here most recently. But to me, it's that, right? Like, what does that secondary look like? We know we had that big battle with Wisconsin that almost came to a lot of lawyer hours consumed potentially, but that was avoided at least. But yeah, to me, it's the secondary is the biggest question. And look, I guess the obvious, right, is like, oh my God, what if Carson Beck's elbow is not right? You know what I mean? Like, I think that seems to be the most obvious one. I assume he's going to be good, just based on like the people I've talked to about the Brock Purdy injury and how that kind of went down. So I feel pretty good. Like, yeah, I guess they're young-ish at wide receiver, but they made a couple of veteran additions, so I'm good. But I feel like Kevin Clark, this is more his expertise because he's in the nitty-gritty when it comes. I mean, he hosted Feinbaum, for God's sake. Like, He was probably. Did you host it from the portal? Like, were you in the portal during the Feinbaum show?
I entered into the portal briefly. Yeah, I didn't like what I saw. It's a very strange place. I was tampered with. But yeah, no. Can I answer the question about what I'm worried about?
Yeah,
because I've been thinking about it. I'm worried. So like, I think it's the beginning of The Big Short, where it's like it's not the unknowns that kill you. It's what you're sure of that just isn't so. I think it's a Mark Twain quote. It might be apocryphal. But like, the thing I'm worried about is we're addressing all of our issues. What if some of the certainties aren't where we think they are, right? Like, what if some of these guys where we're like, oh, well, that's a given. You got to re-ask yourself, are you the team you think you are every single year? And that's I guess, big picture, that's my concern, is like, are we good at every position, even the ones we think we're good at?
Well, we were kind of thinking about that, David, and you're probably the perfect person to answer that. Hey, Peter. No one told you to hop in, Pete, but I appreciate the big But we were actually wondering aloud, like, as we're over here shading UGA's wide receiver core, what makes us think that our wide receiver core is so great? Like, we're counting on guys to develop, and that
and I don't think this is a hugely controversial opinion within the fan base, but I just saw a new mock draft that had Reuben Bane going 4th. Is Reuben Bane the 4th best player in the country going into this year? It's a question I'd love to ask. I was in Syracuse. I saw a lot of Reuben Bane snaps, and I was literally, so the two things, so we talk a lot. The two things that we did all the time last year were every Friday I announced this weekend is the Sam Brown game. That was a given. And then the second one was like fourth quarter, and I always go Reuben Bane. And we have another friend who does this all the time. Reuben Bane's about to make it like a highlight reel, like wall of the hecht play, and it just never happened. It just never happened last year. And so I guess I'm lighting a fire under the boys.
If Reuben Bane is the fourth best player in the draft, then we've had a hell of a season, is what I would say.
Right.
Forget about Charlotte. We better be in at least the semifinal of the playoffs if Reuben Bane is the fourth best player in the country.
Well, David, you're out there a bunch. You care to answer that question? I think Reuben Bane was pretty disappointing last year, and that Syracuse game in particular, he totally wore out, and the secondary was attacked the second that he stopped getting home. So what are your thoughts there?
So Kevin, how much stock do you put into Reuben Bane pulling his hamstring pretty bad, third snap of Florida, and that's a tough injury to come back from the rest of the season? He played through it, and he wasn't himself. I am more optimistic on Reuben than the group chat.
What group chat?
Yeah, I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Fourth pick in the draft is a
Does
little.
JJ Redick need to call out Reuben Bane's conditioning?
Well, I'll say this.
Make that happen if you want. I can at least send the message. Hey, can you do me a favor?
All of my indications were from people around the program. You're there every day, David. It felt like Louisville was supposed to be the game where he was supposed to be full go. All right, he's kind of getting his sea legs under him for some of October. Louisville's going to be full go. I don't know if you are up on how time works, but you give him like another 5 weeks, and all of a sudden we're in the dome, indoors, fast track, and he can't do anything. Kyle McCord's got him in hell, and that to me is something I think about quite a bit in a game that I think about pretty much anytime there's not a song or a movie playing.
My issue with Reuben, I think, this is my opinion, I think he's more of a D tackle than a defensive end. I think he impacts plays with his pressures, but he doesn't finish off pressures into sacks like you would want a defensive end to do. I think
he was amazing in NCAA 25 for me. I got to be honest.
He's very good.
Can I tell you guys something? So I love NCAA 25. I'm glad it exists. I stopped playing it just for the season because I didn't think it was the game that was super polished, and there were all sorts of there's all these real big comebacks that happen late in games, and it's kind of annoying. And I'm a big control what you can control guy. So games where you can lose and it's out of your control, I just hate. I stopped playing. Okay, and so I was playing a game. I think it was against Florida State, and I lost. This is August 30th. I lost because Jaden Harris let the ball just go through his head, unnaturally. And I'm like, well, this game's broken. And then as the season progressed, I said, I think EA may have been onto something with the Jaden Harris letting the ball go literally through his helmet into a receiver's hands. EA kind of had us dead to rights on that one.
I don't want to forget Kevin's initial question. We covered it with Reuben Bane. I think that's probably the prime suspect there. But I'm a little worried about our kicking game. I remember the kicker from the bowl season, and Stark made a whole show in midfield, and it was bad. It was all bad, and that's going to be the savior over here. I remember the Bubba Baxi years. We've been spoiled recently over here with the Boregalis surname. This is a big concern of mine, and there's going to be times in the season where you're going to be in tighter games, especially come playoff time, especially right off the bat, week 1 against Notre Dame. Special teams may decide that game. Am I an idiot for being really concerned about this, David?
No, you're not. It's a concern. This reminds me, Mike, this is a bit of a tangent. So this was before we knew each other, but I was a fan of the Le Batard show and stuff, and so when Miami made it to Charlotte for the Clemson game, right? I remember being on the field because I was taking photos for the website. I remember being on the field. It's the second quarter, the game's already, it is what it is, right? So I'm looking around in the stands, and I see you, and I'm like, oh, there's Mike Ryan from the Le Batard show. And I think the next play was a horrific punt by Zach Fiegels. And I looked over at you, and I couldn't hear what you said, but I could read your lips, and it was some of the most vile stuff that you were saying in Zach Fiegels' direction.
I hated that kid.
I could tell.
How did that kid not work out? I mean, his last name is Fiegels. Forgot he's the son of one of the best punters we've ever had.
He's the Bronny of the kicking game at Miami. Hey, is there so Carter Davis has, and I cannot believe we're doing this. It's May 1st.
What are we doing?
Carter Davis, his whole thing is he's like a 50-yard. He was like 2 for 2 or something from 50 yards out last year. Are we going to do like what USF did and have that kid from Texas do the 40 and in, and then we have the 50 and up?
Truthfully,
like,
I don't know. Okay. I don't know, but I would
honestly, the analytics look like that's what we should do.
I would assume. This is my assumption. I would assume the Texas guy is going to be your field goal kicker. Carter's going to be your kickoff guy. That would be my assumption.
But so the guy who is 50-50 from over 40 yards, he's going to kick the 44-yarders. That's great. I love that.
Wow.
Looking forward to the fall already.
Yeah, the Kevin Clark Big Short analogies really kind of shook my world. It was all positive vibes over here. We got a quarterback that's throwing. Oh, speaking of quarterbacks that are throwing, am I stupid to think that Florida may be ranked ahead of Miami in these preseason rankings?
Well, Andy Staples had him 10 spots ahead of the Miami Hurricanes on his recent thing.
I don't agree. George, I know you have to go soon, but the national momentum in terms of the coverage is very pro-Florida Gators, as if this wasn't a team that really disappointed overall. I know that they ended up battling, and when you contextualize the season, you have plenty of reason to get excited, especially if you have the quarterback. But their quarterback was throwing after Carson Beck was throwing, and they're not exactly sure to the extent of that injury. They're just kind of crossing their fingers and toes over there. This one kind of feels dumb to me, and it's all a setup for Billy Napier and company.
Well, it's all just the momentum of what you just discussed, right? Like, it's like, oh man, those guys overachieved, because everybody in America that covers college football is like, oh, the Gators are screwed. They're going to win like 3 games. Like, even people who you trust and their opinions on a national level, like, these people were very down on the Gators just because they had that impossible schedule. And then somehow they make it look better, obviously, than anyone anticipated. So it's this feeling like, oh, Billy Napier, you know what? This may be the time he gets it going. I just don't know if I buy that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just think that, I don't want to be mean, but like, there's a reason I feel like MC talks about him being a good man. You know what I'm saying?
Be mean.
It's the place. This is the place.
MC, what are you here for?
Like, when they were playing last year, it's like, you know, he's a good man. And it's just like, I don't know if that's like a great compliment. I got to be honest with you. And I know there was a lot
of he's a great man with Mark Richt at Georgia too. Hey, I need to address this question. So to me, I would put Clemson in this bucket too. It's very old world, because there's this idea like Clemson is returning. I think Bill Connelly had 80% of production, right? And they've got a couple first-round draft pick guys, Buzz on the same ones that Reuben Bane had, which is going 4th overall. And I'm looking at it and I'm saying, you know, returning production, that's like 2009. That's like, okay, these guys were good as sophomores, now they're juniors, or they got a bunch of guys who come back as seniors. The transfer portal has changed everything about the sport, everything. And we see more microwave teams, whether that's TCU or Washington, or University of Miami last year, where they go from 7 wins to 10 wins, and they could have had a playoff spot. SMU. Another one.
Yep.
I don't think
there's with our cast offs.
Like, you look at it. Yeah, you look at a team like LSU, who is adding a ton through the portal, and not all of them are hits, right? But Patrick Payton is there. Maybe he wakes up, stuff like that. And there's just going to be too many teams in the SEC and throughout the Power Four where they add 5 starters and they leapfrog the Gators returning guys. I think that the portal cannot be overstated, and I kind of think that we had this like Sports Illustrated cover like 2002 mentality sometimes, where we're like, oh, here comes the hot team from the end of last year. That's not how it works. It's a year-to-year league. Rick Pitino said this about college basketball on Pardon My Take, and it's not to where it is in basketball. But he said it's like the European Basketball League. Everybody's on a 1-year deal, and I don't think the national media has quite reckoned with that.
I got to roll, boys. Great to see you all.
Well, we've only got a couple more minutes here of Kevin Clark, so I want to kick it over to David Lake. These 2 teams were not close when they were on the field last year. Now, I know momentum kind of puts that in a weird perspective. What the Gators' retort would be, what would it be like if those 2 teams matched up at the end of the year? okay, they have a quarterback that they feel better about. I don't know why. He's got any kind of injuries.
DJ Lagway played in that game. He threw an interception to Jaden Harris, one of the worst players in our program's history, who was laying down. He was on his back.
Yeah.
So there was this hypothetical, with Lagway. We saw it. Jaden Harris stuffed DJ Lagway in a locker. And then Jaden Harris, for the rest of the season, was one of the worst players I've ever seen race.
Yeah, and footballs go through his head.
Football goes through his head, and that would have been an upgrade, frankly, from some of the stuff we saw. It was not good. So we do have a small but mighty sample size.
I will say, you just cited a real life play that had it happen in NCAA, you would have been really pissed off. The lying down.
No, if it happened to me, yeah. If I had gotten it, I'd have gone this.
Yeah,
we're going this way. We're going this way. Move the chains.
So, David, the overall sentiment, these two teams weren't close when they played on the field. I understand momentum and whatnot. There was a transfer portal. Miami made plenty of additions. Florida made a lot of redundant additions. I think overall, people are really excited, but there's only one ball to throw to those receivers, and they seem to be really invested in that. So what is your take on how these two teams match up? Is it going to be more of what last year was, or did Florida close the gap some?
I think the answer to this Florida-Miami question has to do with DJ Lagway. Like, how good is he? Does he take that step? Is he throwing footballs at the start of the year? That's the whole key to Florida. D-Money, what's up?
What's going on, fellas?
Are you in overseas?
Are you in a kimono?
Yeah, this comes with the hotel out here in Japan.
Have you seen any U's out in Japan? Is the brand massive?
Any U's? No, not any U's. A lot of Major League Baseball. It's a fashion statement for young women. So like you see these like stylish, like model looking young women dressed in like $6,000 worth of clothes, and they have like an Oakland A's hat or like a White Sox hat. Shout out to College Mike. So it's an interesting phenomenon.
I have to go, but I do want to say that phenomenon. I was reading a book about Arnold Palmer a couple months ago, as one does, when I wasn't looking at Carter Davis analytics, and they were talking about how that Arnold Palmer's logo became like a huge fashion trend for like in Japan. It was making like tens of millions of dollars, and he told his company, he was like, let me go over there and like represent the brand. And they were like, no, they don't know you're a person. Like, stop. They just know the umbrella. Don't go ruin it by being weird old Arnold Palmer over there. So like the best thing you can do is just be in the Japan fashion world, be the trend, make lots of money. I gotta go. I do endorse the 2-kicker platoon that we discussed earlier. I'll leave you guys to it.
Deed, what are you doing here? You want to close out?
What time is it?
It's honestly not that late. It's only 7. I was supposed to be on the show, and I screwed up the alarm because these time zones are all messed up. So it's been a mad dash. I actually woke up, and this is like the pajama they give you at the hotel. So.
Did you catch the Panthers game last night?
Some like fish market at 4, and I told my wife I had to be on the show, so we missed both things. So
are they talking about Brad Marchand? Are they talking about Brad Marchand's big game last night as the Florida Panthers eliminate John Cooper, Peter Reese's favorite head coach and favorite team, the Tampa Bay Lightning? For those that aren't privy to Peter Reese's close friends, Algo, he's a big Lightning guy.
Get out of that, I'll go. Oh, I have news. Halsey, I don't think it's coming.
Oh.
LSU?
Yeah, I think it sounds like he's trying to squeeze more money. And he wants to go to LSU. So it's just like it's just one of those deals where, the asks are getting so ridiculous that it sounds like this is just, a squeeze job. He just always wanted to go to SEC, LSU, and it was just attempt to get more money out of UM. That's the impression I'm getting.
I guess it's fair to ask, does he suck? We're talking about a nickel here, guys. Come on. Do we really want him all that bad? You know what? Best of luck over there. Never won.
Yeah, I haven't watched him. I mean, here's my philosophy. I know, Lake, I'm sure you agree with this. If he was that good, he'd be in the pros. He could definitely help us, but if he was that good, he'd be in the pros, right?
Yeah.
We acted out.
He would help. He would help Miami, though. He would help Miami.
Oh, big time. I mean, yeah.
He just did by leaving town. He just did. Go over there and tie it.
But yeah, he's like a 5'11", 215-pound safety, and that's why he's got to be a big nickel.
And he's old too, so that's good. I mean, we need age is good.
He's old.
Although, Mish Powell, he was old. I see some Mish Powell similarities for better and worse. Mish helped us in certain ways too.
I could see that.
But just being veteran, being productive, being old, still being in college.
All right. Well, there you have it. Direct from Tokyo. Halsey not coming, and he now sucks. Like we pivoted. He's a terrible football player. Nightcar doesn't suck anymore. He's good. We're back on what's a pro player comp that we're making for Nightcar now that he's back in our good graces. I talk so much crap about Nightcar. So much.
It's a great one.
Jerry Rice.
Like Matthew Golden type.
Okay. Well,
poor man's Jerry Rice, maybe.
Poor man's Jerry Rice.
Yeah.
I mean, allegedly, he didn't ask for more NIL on his way back. So, yeah, I guess. Not like Halsey, who sucks, by the way. Not unlike your
I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
No, I said that. He's gone. He sucks. If he wants to stop sucking, he can change his mind, have buyer's remorse, come back, offer goes down a little bit, and then we're back on board. I'll be putting highlights myself on YouTube set to dubstep if he decides to commit here. But for now, LSU Tiger sucks.
D-Money, are you familiar yet with Jacoby Thomas?
No, we texted about him yesterday, or I guess it was nighttime for me. It was morning for you guys. I haven't watched him yet, really. That's just the highlights. I do like that his hitting is the strength. I've been saying on the show, just being around the defense, they need somebody that sets a tone. Obviously you want Sean Taylor, who sets a tone, covers half the field and returns it for touchdowns. But I think that's one aspect we do need.
Yeah.
What do you think? I know. Give me the edited version of what you said yesterday.
So to me, he's okay. You mentioned Mish Powell. I think he's probably a more physical Mish Powell, but less of the playmaking ability and coverage is kind of how I would view him. But I think he can help Miami. I think they need another safety, and I think if he's the guy, he helps.
Yeah, the one I'm trying to figure out, and I'm a little out of the loop. I mean, I just got this Halsey stuff before I jumped on, but I'm a little out of the loop. I haven't heard much on Keontae Scott. Not better or worse. Don't no one listening read into that. I just don't know what's the latest on him. He plays safety too. I wonder if that's something here that he could play safety, and we could maybe keep one of these corners at nickel, if that's the way it goes.
Yeah, he played a lot of nickel when he was most successful at Auburn. He played a lot of nickel. It looked like they moved him on the outside at corner this past year, and he just wasn't as effective. And his best years were under Zach Etheridge. So that's why he went to Houston and is now in the portal again. I would assume, I don't know, but certainly connections there. And you would assume Miami would kick the tires.
Look at that. Those people that hung around for the entirety of the happy hour got two of the best Miami info guys ever talking shop about someone I could not possibly care less about right now in this moment. Now I will treat that person like a son come Labor Day weekend, but that's the real good stuff right there. D, you would be happy about the transition into the Islas Canarias spot that I did. They got that one just for the love of the game. Any other sponsors that we need to take care of here on our way out?
Miami Hurricane Team Store, authentic kimonos available. In promo code INSIGHT 20% off your first kimono. But Hurricane Team Store, MiamiHTS.com, and then located across the street. Go to the lake, by the way, or go to the lake. Got a lake on here. Go to the light this weekend. NC State, hottest program in the ACC versus the other hottest program in the ACC. Canes are rolling. Sebastian Fonten, awesome live stream this morning. I'm told. I just saw it pop up in my feed this morning. I'm going to watch it now. But baseball's rolling. Go to the light. Best show in town, aside from the Cats, who I know you two you've been on there for the whole time. As long as I've known both of you guys, you've been on that train. But certainly in Dade County, best show in town, Miami Hurricanes baseball. So check it out, the light, and go to the team store beforehand, right across the street. Promo code INSIGHT20.
Hopefully you find joy, happiness, and chugs over in Tokyo. You're on the clock. David. We got a big night of hockey ahead of us here, so make sure to get in that contest. To all the people that stopped by and all the commenters here for something a little different, Spring Stampede edition of Canes Insight, we appreciate you. Go Cats, vamos Gatos, go Canes. D, really good to see you. It does look like it's too FSU-y for me, the whole aesthetic. I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. We got like Garnet, we got Gold.
Garnet and Goldish, yeah.
Yeah, and the tan.
But he looks good. He looks good.
Tan, I just came back from Talladega. I caught up with you on tan. You're over there. You're not getting some rays in Japan. I'm gonna.
No, Land of the Rising Sun. I mean, the sun was out, but they praise whiteness out here. I've noticed. Like they're very white. Like they try to be as light as possible. It's like the opposite of Miami Beach, where we're trying to tan.
Yeah.
Here they're trying to get as white as they can.
I'm sure your hair.
Really so.
I'm sure your hair is getting a lot of fanfare over there.
No, everybody has the same hair as I do.
Yeah, that's the point that I was trying to make. David also coming up the tan rankings real quick on that West Coast.
Yeah.
Look at that tan.
He's been working.
Yeah. All right, boys. Well, it was great to have you over here, Dean. And thank you for the surprise. We'd like to thank our intrepid producer, Peter Ruiz, who would pop in, pop out, shift boxes on us. He did a great job considering that he was on an airplane. And David Lake, shout out to you. You're a legend for staying for the entire show. Make sure to check out.
Fun.
There's a lot of great people in this Canes content space. We're honored to be one of them. We can both go to the mat for David Lake and his integrity and how good his information is. We like him personally too. He's a good dude. So thank you so much, David, for
it's fun. Thanks for having me.
All right, boys. We'll see you next week.